You do not. But yet it has that name, and it's because when we see the wild cucumber growing on our trails, it's a vine, and it has like a gourd-like coating on it. And believe it or not, these very spiky things on it are soft in the beginning. And this is what's inside it when the outer coating falls off. Now, we have to be careful when we see this plant growing that we clarify that's called, the common name is wild cucumber, but it is not edible. Because I knew of a guy who was teaching this in Pasadena, and he mentioned those were wild cucumbers, and it was in the softer stage. And there was somebody in the class who took that and bit into it. And he wound up having to go to the hospital. And so there are people from, other parts of the world who might think, well, this must be, edible, because there are some cucumbers that are rounded and not long. But anyhow, so I wanted to get that point across. Almost all parts of this are toxic to people, and the seeds are deadly. But the seeds also have a wonderful use. You can take the seeds and pulverize it, and we have a rock called ochre that grows around, that can be found around Santa Clarita. That's a golden color, and the older version is red color, and that was made into a pigment. And that was used for some of the petroglyphs. That was used for a sunblock, a type of. So you would take the wild cucumber, pulverize it, take that ochre, mix that in, add a little bit of animal fat to it, and that's how it was applied. So it had a use. Today we're going to be talking about botany. What is botany anyhow? It's a scientific study of plants, right? Botany tells you where the plants grow, their relationship to other plants. It takes a lot of facts. And then you have ethnobotany. And that's what the first half of this class is going to be. Ethnobotany is when you see this willow, we can say what was done historically with it, what's done currently with it. And then the last part of the class is biomimicry. And that's where we're using nature, different things that we see even around the park, and incorporating that into technology now and into the future. So with that, I wanted to talk about when we did the hike on Thursday, there were two people in your class that was asking me, hey, are fiddlenecks edible? Well, I was not the right person to ask fiddlenecks, because the first thing that goes to mind, because my background has music in it, is I'm seeing the actual violin and the fiddleneck, and okay, so that can't be it. But then you have things like, the guy that was asking that said, well, they're like purple and orange. And it's like, okay, so let's think about that. You have an orange one that's called Amsinca, and there are 12 different types of this plant, of this fiddlenecks that's orange. And we do have that growing in the park. And of those 12 that are out there, that's in the world, by the way, in the world, 9 of them are found in California. One of them is protected and endangered. It's a giant fiddleneck. So, and then you have some ranchers, it's kind of like not exactly true, where they say, well, if the cattle eat it, it's going to make them sick. Well, the cattle will only eat it if there is nothing else around to eat, and they eat a large quantity of it. So when they say that it's bad, I got to get rid of it, it's only bad to that point that if they are penned in with only that, yeah, they would get really sick. There's also a purple fiddleneck that's called a Lacey facilia. And that one, even though they're both in the same family, they're in the borage family, that one is absolutely edible. And so it's important that you do know your plants when you're collecting them for edibility, for medicinal, for whatever kind of usages there are. Now, sometimes, and people would say, well, so then we should just go by like the scientific, because there's no question about it when you're just using the scientific name. Not for all cases, because some of the scientific names came about because of people from different European countries, and it's like, oh, I just discovered this, and they named them, they put their own name after it. But then you have things like this. I brought this last week, but I didn't talk about it. That's the Yaupon. Now, how could okay. People have asked, can you grow coffee or tea successfully out here? And you'd have to try really hard to get that to grow. However, there are 2 plants native to North America that have caffeine, and only 2. And that's this. This is Yaupon 1 and Yaupon 2. There's 2 different versions of it, okay? And this is found on the East Coast. It's mostly in the southeast, but it can be found even a little bit north, and it goes out to Texas, and it just grows that way. Can you grow this in California? Of course you can, but you have to work with it because our very hot months, it won't be happy. But the scientific name for it, tell me if you would go for a plant that's called Ilex vomitoria. And that is, okay, not exactly something that you're anxious for, right? Well, you know how that came about. I'm going through history, and I'm going down this rabbit hole. And this came about because it was named by the British in 1789. Well, the Boston Tea Party was in 1773, and people think it was a conspiracy to smear this plant's reputation. Because this, I mean, it would be like having a Starbucks on every corner, and it's free, okay? To make Yaupon, it's a tree, and it looks like a holly tree. It's not very tall. It can go like 15 feet, maybe 20 feet. And you pick the leaves, and you roast it in your oven or in a skillet. You can dry skillet. And once it's roasted, then you crumple it up, and you have your tea. And this was with indigenous people all in that area, and then it was even a trade item, was using this caffeinated beverage. It was a social gathering kind of thing. It was at the end of the day, we're going to relax, or I need extra energy. It was the same reasons why a lot of us drink coffee. It was a taste that they liked. And so the British said, well, it's because they would drink gallons and gallons of it, and then they would vomit, and so that's why we're going to call it that. I mean, how many people think it was a smear campaign? And it's been around, you know, forever, where it didn't really get the popularity that we would like it to be, only until like the last maybe 15, 20 years. Now it's starting to resurface, and they're saying, hey, this is really good. And it's caffeinated, and it's not really that expensive, except right now in stores it happens to be. If you know somebody on the East Coast, tell them what to look for, and have them send you some leaves in the envelope, you know, to the mail. So there you have. You can't always go by what the Latin names are either. They're not reliable. Now, there's plants that are inside our park called sugarbush. And you'll have kids that come along and say, oh, sugarbush, like candy, right? And so what you need to know is there are actually 4 plants that are in the RHUS, the Rhus family. This one in our park is laurel sumac. Okay, and this is also laurel sumac. And how can you tell the difference between laurel sumac and sugarbush? Well, what do you see here with this laurel sumac? The stems are red, and along the edges of the leaves, it's red. Here, there's different versions of red on the plant. Laurel sumac always has red. And these are the different flowers that's going to come from it. And this is from last year's flowers. People who do the model train setups, they use this plant after it's flowered as trees. You know, it's a kind of a cool little thing. And you would think, oh, wait a minute, sumac, isn't that like poison oak? Can I get start itching because of this? The only time that you can have contact dermatitis with this is if you are trimming it. And the sap that's below it, you might get contact dermatitis. So anyhow, this is, always know the laurel sumac is red. Now we have in the park sugarbush, and do we have even any lemonade berry?
You know, it's hard to find. There may be, I've discussed it with Ian, but they hybridize.
They do. Yeah. And so that drives people crazy, but you can know the sugar bush and lemonade berry both don't have any of the red in the stems, leaves, any of that. And so when they want to point that out, you look for that. And the berries that form on our sugar bush actually don't taste sweet. They taste like lemon. And so I've taken the berries and dropped like maybe a spoonful worth inside my water bottle and shook it up, and it tastes like lemon water. And so, I mean, that's okay. I don't think that you're allowed to tell kids that. Are you allowed to? You are?
Yeah, but you just don't tell them to do it in the park. I mean.
Yeah, really. Really. So there you have that, that one. And another thing that you can see with sugar bush is sugar bush, if I want to spell phonetically with an SH, has sharp leaves, okay? So sharp leaves for sugar bush and lemonade berry leaves are rounded, and it's more found like towards the beach area, but it will readily hybridize and it confuses people. Okay, so why don't we have that down? We're supposed to be doing a PowerPoint. Well, I want you to think about another plant that's really common. No. I don't want, okay, not yet. I don't want it down. Okay, I don't want it down yet. Not yet. So you see mustard all around, right? And does anyone not know what Western black mustard is, or Brassica nigra? There it is, okay? And I think it's really important that we know what mustard is and that we can key it out. There are, how many categories? Let me see, I wrote it down. 174 plant categories, okay, plant families. There's only one. There's not too many absolutes out there, but for mustard there is, because only the mustard family absolutely has everything edible. It may not be palatable, but it is edible. Now you all have a little card. Does everybody have something to write with? If not, I've got pencils. But you all have something to write with? Okay. Anyone who doesn't have a card or pencil, because what we're going to do is break down the structure. And what you're going to do is draw what I've drawn on your little card and carry it with you forever. It's the same size as your driver's license. So you will always know. But all mustards have this. First of all, they all have 4 petals. So what you're going to do is draw, and it's in that shape. You're going to draw out 4 petals on your card.
Oh gosh, I didn't use pencil.
Okay. For anyone who feels more comfortable with a pencil, go for it. So it's just 4 petals. The Latin is cruciferous, and that's for cross, and it's that shape.
You're talking about the flower?
Yes. Yep. Does everyone have 4 petals done? Okay, now beneath every flower, there are things called, so those are the petals, 4. You also have 4 sepals, and those are little leaves to protect it. And so we're going to do the sepals here. They're small. They're between. Okay, so they're between the petals.
And they're green?
For mustard, it's green. But for other plants, I mean, like you have lilies that are 3 petals and 3 sepals, but the sepals look exactly like petals. It's the same color, the same size, and everything. So the color can vary. For this mustard, it's 4 sepals. Okay, and then, now this is the important thing. You have one pistol packing mama. Okay, so she's really cool there. She's there with the one pistil. Okay, and then you have the one pistil packing mom in the middle, and then you have surrounding it 6 stamen. Okay, they're always going to stay men here, but the configuration is important. There's 4 stamen that are tall and 2 of them that are short. Does everyone have that? There used to be a plant that was considered in the mustard family called bladderpod, and actually it was one of the symbols for, I think it was theater pain or CMPS, and that was one of their things, and they said, wait a minute, bladderpod isn't a mustard. It has 6 stamens, but they are all the same size. So they put them in a category all to themselves. It's not considered mustard. So they're really strict about having 4 tall, 2 short. Now, why is that so important with mustard? Well, when you see this mustard all over Santa Clarita, do you know that there used to be another plant that was all over instead of mustard? It was this, okay? This is called cream cups, is the common name, and it's Plastistemon californicus. Okay, now imagine, instead of the mustard, we had this. And why is it that so many plant people really don't like mustard? Well, it has oils in it, and when we're into fire season, it creates fires, makes it worse. But yet, we have a lot to thank for mustard. For example, can you think of another mustard plant? Cauliflower, broccoli, pardon?
Broccoli.
Broccoli names, can you?
Brussels sprouts.
Yep. What is that? Cabbage, yes. Yes, and so let me go through this. So if you take your black mustard, which has been around for 2,000 years, and you look at the terminal bud, that terminal means it's terminating, it's at the end of a stem. Those terminal buds, the ones that were pretty big, were bred bigger and bigger and bigger, and that from the terminal bud is where your cabbage came from. From the leaves, next time you buy a black mustard, look at it. Look at the different types of leaves that's on the thing. And so you'll see from the leaves, that's where you got collard greens and kale. And then when you're looking at the lateral buds, that's the ones that are horizontal on the stem, that's where your Brussels sprouts came from. And from the flowers, in Europe, they kept on working with the flowers, getting them bigger and bigger, and that's where broccoli and cauliflower came from. And broccoli and cauliflower wasn't even in the United States. It was imported in the 1920s. You know all that. So there's a lot, and they're still working with mustard because it's that flexible.
Hey, I just had a thought.
What?
I had some beet greens the other night. They were delicious. Are beets in the mustard family, or do you know?
No, but radish is.
Radishes.
And it's really weird that we have a lot of wild mustard in Santa Clarita, but there's wild radish in the San Fernando Valley and in Pasadena, and it looks just like our yellow mustard, except it's pinkish purple. And you'll get it even in Thousand Oaks. For some reason, thankfully, it's not in Santa Clarita. I've never seen any, and I'm on trails all the time. I don't get why that is. But let's see, why, again, is it that we love to hate mustard so much? So here's a bunch of dead mustard, okay? I picked this the other day. And if you take this mustard, I want to let a little bit of air in, And we'll pass this around so you all get a chance. Do you know where the mustard seed is? Where? It's in this dead stem. And so what we're going to do is pass it around. And I've already started to get some seeds. And I'm going to let you crunch the bag and look in the bottom and see, as we'll start here and we'll pass it around. And you can just crunch it a little bit and look at the seeds and pass it along. So you could be seeing all these dead mustards, or you can be digging them out, or just unplanting them. Those seeds are still inside the stems. You're not getting rid of them until you have bagged them up and actually removed them, because that's where they are. That's why you can have mustard pulled for 5 years and the seeds are still going to be there, because it's in the dead stem. Yeah.
I see some docents sometimes pulling out mustard seed down here.
Yeah, they want to get to it before, at any kind of stage in the game.
Yeah, because I think it was Barbara. I saw her one day, and she was all over pulling stuff out, and she said it doesn't belong here.
Right, right. So anyhow, so you can see this is one of the problems with the mustard. Now, let's see.
I think, was your question, is it a non-native plant? So Helen, I think his question was, is it a non-native plant? Should it be pulled out?
Oh, absolutely.
Invasive?
Absolutely. It's not just a non-native, but it's an invasive. In fact, you can Google for CMPS. They list invasive. Sometimes people erroneously will say that a plant is invasive when actually it's just a non-native. But with mustard, some people claim we're never going to get rid of it because there's so much of it out there. But yet we have native mustards. Like there's this beautiful orange flower in the spring called a wallflower. That's a mustard. We have, a few native mustards too. It's this one, wherever it went, that we don't especially like. And it's because of this one that we don't have this. Do you know, it has a fragrance that's really strong. We can still find a few of these cream cups. In some areas of the state, they're absolutely disappearing. But if you smell it, the fragrance is beautiful, and it attracts pollinators big time. And the leaves were used as a vegetable, so it was a very useful plant too. It wasn't just, oh, isn't that a pretty one? It's at a loss to us that that's gone extinct. Since they started collecting data, we have 25 plants already in California that are extinct. And let's see, 183 are now on the endangered or threatened list. And so by trying to do what they're, when they're doing the weed removal, they're trying to make us not have that problem. Okay, so other mustards that we have in the park is shepherd's purse. And shepherd's purse, I think Ron pointed out, had it looks like little valentines on it. Well, a really cool thing about shepherd's purse, when those little valentines dry up and they're like little brown seed heads, inside it are little teeny seeds. But that plant is a cannibal. It eats the insects that are attracted to the seed. It's like what do you call the Venus flytrap? But it's only in that stage when the little valentines are brown. Take a look at what's going on in there. We have carnage happening in the park. And also the seeds from the shepherd's purse are grown for birdseed mix too. So there's a little bit of a use to it. Another plant that we have that's pretty common in our park is this. Have you seen this one? That's buckwheat, right. And so what I did was collected some of the dead or not so dead seed heads for the buckwheat and brought my blender because we need to have a blender in class to show this. And so what we're going to do is take some of these seed heads from the buckwheat. You can see I've not done any kind of extra, let's just put a little bit more in here. Okay. I made sure there was no stems. I made sure there was no bugs. This was clean. And let's see what happens when we turn this on. So I just made buckwheat flour. I did nothing other than pick the heads that were at that stage where they were brown, red, a little bit of white because the white are sweeter, and I blended it and I have flour. Now the buckwheat flour that we have growing on our common buckwheat has no gluten in it. And so that's the stuff that makes your flour products stick together. The simplest thing to do if you had buckwheat flour is to take it maybe half and half, or maybe a little less this and the rest with pancake mix, and you mix that up and try it sometime, okay? But not in our park, or is buckwheat okay? I don't know. Pardon? But anyhow, and you'll see that you're extending it, and there's also different vitamins and nutrients that are in our buckwheat that you're not going to necessarily get in regular kind of flour. So
So when it's produced the little puff, that's all the petals on there. We don't take that.
we take the flour heads. We don't want right. We don't want the leaves. We don't want the stems. We're just going for the top. And so we're just getting the flour head. And if it's all brown, you're not going to have any kind of flavor. So that's why, like, if you can get it half and half of a little bit white and a little bit brown, that works well for your buckwheat flour. When they sell the buckwheat pancakes at Costco, that's a different type of buckwheat. Ours is, you know, but it still works the same way. It's still edible. So that's breaking down the, sorry.
You don't need to separate the seed from the...
Pardon?
You don't need to separate the seed.
No, Lanny was the one who was saying you have to separate and you do that, and that's an awful lot of work. And you're still not getting it. I mean, people pay good money to get cereal that has fiber in it. And that's what you're getting here. I mean, you're getting a little bit of fiber, but you're getting, you know, everything that you need. You're not going through that whole long process. You have people who charge money for these classes and have you go through these crazy processes to get this much flour. I don't know why they do it, because we have conveniences like that. You can do it the old school way, but it would have to be roasted a little bit so you could pulverize it. But that's how that works for buckwheat. Another plant that we see around here that's non-native is horehound. And I think we pointed that out too. That's a mint. All our mints have square edges. And so you can tell that something is a mint. This was, the name horehound actually goes back to the Egyptians. It's over 2,000 years old with this kind of a name. And if you want to look up Egyptian horehound, how did it all start, it's something that I can't talk about in this class. So it's just like, whoa, I didn't know that. But it's been medicinal for that many years. And it's very, very bitter. And so to make it a little bit more palatable, people started to take the horehound as a syrup, and they added a little bit of sweetener to it. And you know, nowadays our taste of sweet and salt, we really crave that more. And so they kept on adding sweetener to it until they made a candy. And so nowadays you can go to these old-timey fairs and they'll sell horehound candy, but I don't think there's any kind of horehound in it whatsoever. I thought I would make horehound candy. And so here it is, wrapped up in brown wax paper from Sprouts. And you're welcome to try that and pass it on down. And oh, I wanted to say also, with any of the food that I'm sharing today, that's up to you to figure out if that's something that you should take. Okay? For a lot of our plants, if a person is pregnant or nursing, you're not supposed to take it. But also, I don't know what your medical background is. I don't know if you're on any kind of medication or if you're allowed this or allowed that. So that's up to you to decide if this is an okay thing. And so I can tell you what the ingredients are so you can figure that out. The horehound was just the horehound plant itself, water, sugar, and cream of tartar. That's all that's in that, and a lot of thyme. And I figured out that if you make this stuff on a rainy day, it becomes more like taffy. If it's on a dry day, it becomes more like hard candy. Pardon? Good. Yeah, yeah, thank you.
Is the name related to the hoary ceanothus?
No, well, in a way, because the underside of the leaf is that white, and hoary meant white. You know, it's that kind of thing. You have poetry that was done in the 1800s, and they talk about the hoary window pane, and and it's all that white frosty thing. So yeah, that's a good way to know too.
Helen, isn't horehound supposed to be good for like congestion?
Yes, and that was the old time thing for if you had a cold. They said, you need to go for the horehound, and they made the syrup or the candy, and that was supposed to be good for sore throats too. Yes.
I'm sorry, you said that the flower has square edges?
The stems of this. Here, this is the stem too, that you can feel this. I'm sorry, it was in water in a vase.
So all the mint flowers remind me a little bit of the buckwheat flowers. Can we do the same thing?
No, because some mints are not edible. Okay, so buckwheat is edible, and the only thing that you can do across the board will be your mustard. Only your mustard. Even with, some people think that succulents are all edible, or some cactus, no. Because there are some of them that will make you really sick. And if you think that you're going to be out in the desert and you're in a survival situation, and it's like, oh, I think that, Bugs Bunny just drank, had a big long straw in the barrel cactus, it must be fine for me. You will get sick. You want to preserve your body fluids, and you do not want to be throwing up. And so the cactus and succulent family is not a safe one to go by. I can tell you a survival story. There was one guy, he came to Placerita after he survived. He was out Joshua Tree, wasn't it? Yes, it was Joshua Tree, and he was with a group, and he was on his way home, and he wanted to do this one hike that was only 4 miles. And so he did this hike, but he got lost. And it was just a short hike. It was like Gilligan's Island. It was a 3-hour tour. This was a 4-mile hike. And he wound up in summertime spending 5 days out there. And yet he survived. And when he spoke to the group that was listening to him, he said that he didn't know the plants, and so he had no food and no water. But it was a good thing that he didn't know what was out there that was edible, because in a survival situation, and you don't have water, then don't eat either. Because those fluids are going to digest the food, and that's going to probably kill you. So, just a small little thing there. I also made, Glenna has there, I made some stinging nettle is another plant that we have. Some of it grows in the park. The short one, that's only maybe like 2-3 feet high, is a non-native European stinging nettle. There's a taller one, giant stinging nettle. Giant stinging nettle is our native plant. The short one is not, but it still has the same nutritional benefits from it. We should not touch the giant stinging nettle because that's heading towards the protected plant. But the short ones are just perfectly fine, and everyone will love you if you take it. Horse people really want you to remove the nettle, because with stinging nettle, our herbivores can't eat it because of the stinging properties to it. It has formic acid, but we can. And so I thought, wow, if we're going to be philosophical about things, we can eat stinging nettle, because as soon as we have the heat applied to us, it removes the formic acid. It goes into the air. Animals don't know fire. But yet animals, the herbivores, can eat poison oak. And we are really bothered by it. So, most of us, or if you aren't bothered by it now, you may, once you cross the bridge of 50 years old, and find yourself that, you're now vulnerable to poison oak. So it's just really funny that nettle is so extremely high in food value. I'll read through it.
I have a funny story to add to that. I grew up on a dairy goat farm, and we'd have nettles throughout our pasture. My mom would go out and torch all of them, and it was heaven for the goats after they torched it.
Ah.
She lit it up.
Oh, and so then they could eat it. And they liked it. So what's in stinging nettle? Glenna has, I made some stinging nettle tea. And I'm giving you a heads up, it's not like a tea that you think is a tea. It's normally like a vegetable type thing. But I added a little bit of lemon, and it's sweet. And I'm not a big fan. It's okay, though. It's a green tea, and it has, let's see, protein, 2.4, in a 1 cup serving, 2.4 grams of protein. It has 42% iron, and calcium 8%, magnesium 5%, vitamin B6 12%. And so why is, aside from it's nutritionally dense, it's also really good for arthritis. That's why I like to pick it. Sometimes people like to intentionally get stung by bees. You can just do the same thing with nettle, and then no arthritis for days that you've had that. It's a really good thing, and it's good for allergies too.
I didn't realize this. So the stinging nettle, the thing that gives you the dermatitis, it's the formic, or it's the acid. It doesn't have little prickles in it that sticks you.
No, it's the formic acid inside the. There's little hairs in it. But let's say this is stinging nettle, and it's growing from the ground, right? If you reach down like that, your hand is you're going to go, ouch, that hurts. Yeah. But if you take your hand and you go underneath the plant and go this way, you're not going to have a problem, because that's the direction that those needles are going to be, the hairs are going to give you a problem. So when I pick stinging nettle, I always go from underneath and go like that, and I don't wear gloves or anything. I just grab it that way.
Yeah, because I had stinging nettle in my yard a couple of years ago. I had never seen it before. I didn't know what it was. And I grabbed it and picked it up, and ow. So it's the hairs have formic acid in it?
Yes. It's the same thing that's in ants when they bite you.
Ants have, I don't know.
Yeah, formic acid, same thing.
So, okay.
And let's say you fell into a patch of stinging nettle, which I saw a person do once at one of these survival camps. Solar cane, the canned pain relief, worked really well. And so, that's just another anecdotal, but it was temporary. But I can also tell you something else that works if you have stinging nettle and you brushed it against it. You can take the leaves and pinch it, smash it, and the pulp, the little green sap that comes out of stinging nettle is soothing. And so a woman from Idaho showed me that. So the cure for stinging nettle, curiously, is more stinging nettle minus the formic acid. So it's right inside it. Now go figure. Right. Also I wanted to get back to the mustard thing with what replaced it. It was not just this used to be there, but what replaced these things was star thistle, invasive grasses, and mustard. And so what is a grass, too? So let's see. You have the other rhyme. You have sedges have edges, rushes are round, grasses are hollow, right down to the ground. Can you remember that? Let's all say this. Okay, right. Sedges have edges, rushes are round, grasses are hollow, right down to the ground. So that's another way to figure it out. There are only just a few plants that are hollow. And hollow plants, kind of like were helpful for other things, like elderberry. We have elderberry growing in the park. If you took someone who has an elderberry tree and they were pruning it and had a branch about this thick, all I did here was peel off the bark, and there's soft, pithy stuff inside it, and it wasn't hard for me to dig that out, and you get a beautiful tube. And so our elderberry is known as a musical plant because they made flutes out of this, okay? Because it's made a nice tube, and when it was made into a flute, it was only 6 holes. It was 3 on one side, 3 on the other. They were not evenly spaced because the flute was to be played this way and that way. And so that increased the range of this flute. Another thing that was made from the same elderberry plant, where you had it and you hollowed it out, is this. And this is a clapper stick that's used in ceremony. And so that also comes from elderberry. What's our tallest grass? Any ideas? What would be the tallest grass that we know?
Pampas grass?
What's
Pampas grass?
what? Giant reed, all that. Well, Lana, you may recognize this. Okay, because she provided this Christmas time, and I'm still holding on to this. Anyone have any idea what these curly things are? It came from a grass. Believe it or not, that came from a grass. This came from a palm tree. And believe it or not, our palm trees are actually a grass, and they actually are hollow. And this was, some of the stems that came from it. So that's our tallest grass.
That was a trick question, Helen.
That was a trick question. Well, now you know. If you're on Jeopardy, you've got it. I expect you to buy me a coffee for it afterwards.
Not native here, but Trent pointed out bamboo is actually the world's tallest grass. It can grow to 151 feet tall.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. Well, so I stand corrected.
Are you saying the whole palm family?
Pardon?
The whole palm family?
If it fits the definition of a palm tree, yes. Palms or grasses. But we call them trees because they look like trees and they've been trimmed. Have you ever gone down to Claremont Botanical Gardens? They have palm trees that have not been trimmed, and you have the branches going all the way down, and it's just, it helps you understand grasses by seeing how it is when it's not trimmed.
Palms native to California?
We have, I think, one form, yeah, and it's out like towards Palms. Do you know what type that is?
Is it Washington or something?
Yeah, that's it. So we do have one of them, but everything else has been brought here. Okay, and then I made nettle tea that we can. Do you want? Okay, do you want to serve it?
It's in the kitchen.
Oh.
Come and get it.
Oh, okay. No. We'll do that. We'll do that break time then, I guess. Okay.
Pass it out if you want, but it might get spilled all over. Don't want to do that.
Okay. So the nettle is in the kitchen that you can try. I need. Where's Ron? Oh no, I need the clicker. I want to go to the PowerPoint now. But I need now. Where is this clicker?
Oh, right there by the lid.
No, that's a pencil sharpener.
Oh,
Where's his?
I have no idea.
Where did he? No, that's not it. It's just a little clicker thing.
Is it on the podium? Inside, like, is there a shelf in there?
Oh, come on.
I'll go get Ron.
Okay, tell him I need the little clicker thing to use this.
Inside of that?
Pardon? Oh, no. Okay. Well, I was going to start with this. I need Ron in order to. Okay. Okay, in the meantime, I'm going to go into some other plants here. For one, Esther provided us today with acorns. So I'm going to talk a little bit about acorns right now. Now, you have some people who will ask, I need the little clicker thing to use the power. And it has to be set up.
So just get the.
Yeah, tell Ron I need the computer.
Do you have the computer?
No.
Okay.
No. So sometimes, thank you. So sometimes you get people who say, well, the Native Americans ate the acorns. So I want to go through this that I made for some school groups. Ron, I need the computer.
For a second.
Yes. See how much you're needed. I was ready to go, and it's like, oh, wait, there's nothing.
I'm gonna be hungry, so I have to go get something to eat.
What a team. Yeah, we'll be calling you in 3 days.
Did Ron have the computer hidden?
I think so. Oh, okay, so while you're doing that, let's go over this. Who eats the acorns? Okay, so for one, we have all the little animals in the forest, right? You have the woodland animals, you have birds, insects. We have over 400 different types of species of everything that eats the acorns in the forest. But yet people will say, oh, it's just the Native Americans that ate the acorns. No, that is wrong. In fact, the same grocery store that Native Americans shopped from, so did pioneers when they came out here. They ate the acorns as well. And people in Asian countries, like the Korean food market even sells it today. Acorns were big then, as they are now. People in European countries and all over ate acorns. The hardest thing to forage is carbs, and the easiest way to do that is with acorns. Wherever oak trees grow, you have acorns, and it has been used as food. And so this started around 12,000 years ago. People started farming, and they grew wheat and other grains. Acorns continued to supplement the diet until the past century in the U.S. Now, we not only don't want to go through the process of acorns, we just want to go and buy our food in restaurants. And so, that's become something quite forgotten. Why is acorn so important? It is 12% protein, 14% carbs, 37% fat. It is nutritionally balanced. If you had one food to survive a winter, it would be acorns because it has everything you need. Things like rabbit would not provide the fat that you need. You would die. And you might have some things that are good, or you might like the taste of it, but unless you have this combination, you're not going to survive.
How many cups do we need in order to obtain the protein and carb?
Well, this is 1 cup's worth. And so it depends upon your body size and calories and, what you're going for. Okay. And is there any problems with acorns? Sometimes when you're collecting acorns, there's holes. And that is a blown up picture of an oak weevil. It's nasty. It hatches out of the shell like a chicken or an alien. But some people thought that the weevil gave extra protein. I'm not one of those. but they do exist. And how are you going to identify acorns? You will identify acorns by the caps. That's why I made those little charts for you all. It's the caps. When people give you acorns that do not have caps, they do not give you the information that you need. So as long as you have the cap, that's really important. The leaves are important too, but the caps tell you more about what type of acorn it is. And the process for making acorns edible is relevant to the levels of tannin and how long you're going to be leaching these acorns. So I'll get to that in a minute. Some people fought we didn't have battles, but we actually had little skirmishes over oak trees. Because in like tribes and different indigenous areas, you kind of had oak trees that were assigned to you, and sometimes your tree didn't produce. So when you collected acorns, you collected for yourself, for your need, which is I think 400 pounds for a year per person. But you would go a little bit over that in case your tree was not, or your trees were not producing for your family. And if you were going hungry, there's sometimes people would, hey, I want that. I'm really, really hungry. And that's where you would get some skirmishes going on. And so just like people are all different, you're asking how much of it you're going to eat and what the nutritional breakdown is on the acorns. It's wild. Just like people, they're all different, and so are the acorns too. Now, how do you process acorns? So let's say you have somebody who has a yard full of acorns, and they say, take it. And so you're collecting these acorns, and any of them that have little holes, as you're going along, you can just get rid of them. Or I'll just, scoop a whole lot of them up. And you need to get them out of the shell. So when I first started doing acorns, which was decades ago, I would be pounding them. I had the little mortar and and it was going really slow. And so it's like, well, there must be a faster way. So I took acorns inside a cloth bag and put them on my driveway and drove a few times on this because, we're fishing in this century, right? And then I put it inside a 5-gallon bucket. And darn, they don't float. They don't separate it out. I just, did that. So I'm saying, don't do by mistakes. That doesn't work. But what does work is I had several grinding bowls, and I would put on videos. Remember those? When my kids were younger, and they'd have friends over. And so we'd have a bunch of these things going, and that's how I was efficient. I had other people doing this. They did my work for me. It was child labor, and so they, would pound it. And so you would open the acorns. Okay, so let's say you have the acorns. You're going to take them home and as soon as you get them home, you put them inside your oven on the lowest heat. And inside the oven on the lowest heat for about an hour. And then you can keep your acorns in a decorative basket in your living room that Martha Stewart would be proud to see. And you can take your time, because once it's been in that lowest heat, you're not going to be growing any weevils or anything bad is going to happen to it. And so now you can process it at your own leisure. And so now you're taking your acorns that you did that first step, and that's very important. And so now the second part is to open them up. And I had a cheesecloth bag or a painter's bag. Marilena got me some painter bags that saved me the cheesecloth problem. And the acorns went inside there, and they got inside a pot of water. And you can cold leach or hot leach acorns. It produces different types of flour based on if you're going cold or hot. I went cold because I like to bake with it. And so whenever I would think of it, I'd look at the water, and I would pour out the brown water and put in clear water. And how can you tell if an acorn has had the tannins removed? Some people would say, oh, it's when the water runs clear. No, it's you take one of those acorns and you try it. And if there's no tannin, if it's absolutely tasteless, it's fine, because sometimes it fools you and it's still having, a brown liquid, or maybe it's clear and it still has tannin. It depends on the acorn. So the only way you can really tell if the tannin is gone is by tasting it. And then if it tastes fine, then you've got it. And so now you have the acorns that's been leached, and they have no more tannins in it. And you take those acorns and you dry them really, really well. You can't have one single drop of water on that. You can't have it in humidity, because it will get mold. And you will be so angry, because I know, I did this. because it's a lot of work and it doesn't take much for it to get moldy. So you keep this really dry. You store it either in like a paper sack that's porous, or you can put it in your freezer, because the freezer seems to stop everything from growing. But there you have your acorns, and it's been dried, and so you can either have it as a whole acorn, or you could put it in your blend deck and it'll turn it into a powder for you. But then it's the nutrition, once it's turned into powder, the nutrition starts to filter less. And that's it. That's acorns. Or there's an even easier way if you want to have acorn flour. You ask Esther where she got it. Where did you get the
jug?
Yes.
At the Korean market.
Yes, and so they sell it at the Korean market. And they don't call it acorn flour. They call it acorn starch or acorn powder. It goes under different names. I've never seen it say flour, but if it says acorn on it, it's probably going to be that stuff. And what Esther was sharing with us, you too can make. You can make it from the stuff that you buy in the store, or you can make the stuff that you just made from the acorns that grow on the ground. And all that was 4 tablespoons of acorn flour to 1 cup of water. It's stirred in really, really good, and then you heat it in your ancient America microwave, and it will become a medium brown, a really nice chocolate brown. And when you see that color, and that's generally about, it depends on your microwave, so it's hard for me to give you directions. It could be 3 minutes, it could be 5 minutes, something like that. Then it was poured inside a Pyrex pan, and I put it in my fridge. And from the fridge, in less than half an hour, it's becoming like gelatin. And what you saw when you were eating the acorn, if you haven't, please try it. You can see it does this gelatinous, like jiggles without the flavor in it, and you can add whatever flavor you want. You can add some kind of a dipping sauce to it. You can pretend that it's tofu and go like that. Any recipe that calls for pecans, it can be replaced with acorns. So, yes.
The Thousand Oaks Acorn Company has really good flour.
Where is that?
You have to go online, but yeah.
Thousand Oaks, you said, like.
Yeah, Thousand Oaks, the city. It's a small little company. Thousand Oaks Acorn.
Is it expensive?
Like $10, like a small little bag.
Yeah.
Coffee, like the coffee size bag.
Okay. If I bought that, I would put it straight into my freezer, because I would want to be sure that there's not going to get any mold. Because that's the only problem with that is, again, it has to be very dry, and you have to be careful of that happening. Am I set up here?
Yeah, you're set up. You want to get the lights, Ken? So here's what you do to go here.
Do they really? Where? They sell it now?
Yeah.
Oh, good for them.
I just looked it up.
Wow.
They specialize in all the different vegan flour, vegan and non-gluten-free flour.
Okay, so you have that option now, and now you know why acorns are so important. Okay, so.
To go forward, you hit this. See this where thumb is?
Okay, that's good.
And then to go backwards, you hit the top button. It's not intuitive. And the middle button is a laser pointer.
Okay.
And here, I'll move your stems here.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, it's okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Move it towards where the yucca is. Okay. Well, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Okay, so first I wanted to talk about pollination mechanisms. And so here you have on the left, let me see, on the left-hand side, you have a poppy that hasn't been pollinated, but it wants to be pollinated. And so it's out there, it's open, and it's saying, I'm here, and it's just waving it on. And can you tell that it's had it? That it's been pollinated over here? All it needs is to, be sitting off to the side, smoking its cigarette, saying that was great. And so here we have it. But you'll see this again and again with plants that are pollinated, the before and after picture. And whether it's wind or insects or animal pollinations, they can tell that too. And look at this one. These are sticky leaf monkey flowers. We only have this type at Placerita, that orange color one. We have seen that one that's over on East Canyon heading towards the San Fernando Valley. But I took this whole picture in Santa Susana Pass State Park. And so they have a mix of all these colors. And so we'll see if that will spread out. But it's kind of interesting that that park has a couple of protected plants, and this is considered, one of them was the other colors, a monkey flower. We have some plants that also get pollinated by an unusual way, and that's called buzz pollination. And that's our nightshades and manzanitas. Okay, I'll get back to that. I'm going to keep you busy today. And so one thing that I've done on hikes is I carry a little piece of black paper with me and a tuning fork. And I can go to anything that's in the nightshade family or manzanita and hold this little card up to it and do that. And it drops its pollen on my little card. Okay, isn't that the coolest thing? And I've done that even, not even Placerita, when I go on hikes with random people, I've shown, it's like, whoa, that is the coolest thing. And so we have some plants that need buzz pollination. You know what does our buzz pollinating? It's our native bees. It's not our European honeybees. I spent a good 15, 20 minutes one day by detour pardon? By Jimson weed. And the flower was open. It was early morning. And there was a bumblebee, or a native bee, that was inside pollinating. And there were two little European honeybees that were sitting on a leaf just outside it. And it was like, well, darn you, you're waiting for the, for this to happen because you already know. And then the European bees were following right behind because that was the only way they could get to it. So let's see what they have to say about buzz pollinating.
Click it again. I think that'll start it. There you go.
Okay.
Oh, stop.
Oh.
I forgot you need sound.
Oh. Wait.
That's
Okay,
fine.
that's wrong. That's the wrong one.
Oh, that's the wrong one?
Okay, you need to back it up.
Well, we need sound. Let me get the, I forgot you have.
Have you noticed different frequencies of tuning forks having different?
Yeah, that's a good question.
That is a really good question because I only have that one tuning fork. That's B flat.
C or D or
No, it's B flat. So I moved it over to there because it should be in that. Well, I'm going to move it back to the monkey flower because it's pretty. Okay.
sound plugged in. I forgot these had sound.
Okay, while you're working, is it going to be a little bit of time? A little bit of time, Ron?
Well, just.
Okay.
Right, it should be ready right now. Hold on.
Okay.
Just check over.
Okay. Oh, so we do have time. Okay. I was going to show something else. No. Go ahead. We'll start it.
Start it. This is buzz pollination.
Yep.
This buzzing is a secret password, the key to a lock. What this bumblebee is after is pollen. Bumblebees eat pollen. It's high in protein. But the flower doesn't want to give it to just anyone, so it hides it away in those bright yellow anthers. For a flower, that's unusual. Most flowers keep their pollen on the outside of the anther, which is the male part of the flower. Pollen is basically sperm for plants. Most flowers make sugary nectar too. They use it as bait to attract bees and other pollinators, which get coated with pollen along the way. And since bees are messy, they inadvertently scatter some of that pollen onto the female part of the next flower they visit. That's how most flowers have sex. But this type of flower doesn't offer nectar. The only way to get to its pollen is through those tiny pores at the ends. But the bumblebee knows just what to do. It wraps its legs around the flower and bites down on the anthers, that male part of the flower. See those wings shaking? Normally, the bumblebee uses those powerful muscles to flap its wings. That's what makes the buzzing sound when they fly. But here, those muscles vibrate its whole body, so hard and fast that it makes a louder, higher-pitched buzz. This vibration shakes up the pollen trapped inside the anthers until it spews out all over the bumblebee. It's called buzz pollination, and you don't need a bumblebee to do it. A tuning fork will do. The bumblebee brooms the pollen down into sticky sacs on its legs, carries it back to the hive. Only a few types of pollinators, like bumblebees, are capable of buzz pollination. Honeybees can't do it. This field is kind of a free-for-all. Think Las Vegas buffet. Tons of food, but long lines, lots of competition. Buzz pollination is more like a private club, by only permitting pollinators that know the secret knob. The flower ups the chances that its pollen will end up on flowers from the same club, the same species. The bumblebee? Well, sure, it has to work a little harder, and there's no sweet nectar. But it's a reliable pollen stash that almost no one else has access to. Tomatoes, potatoes, blueberries. All of these need buzz pollination to reproduce. Much of the food we eat owes its existence to that buzz. Our secret password here at Deep Look, I'll be honest, it's that subscribe button. Clicking subscribe releases a cloud of goodwill and gratitude from all of them.
Okay. And
Click it again to get the next slide.
okay, but I'm not ready for that yet.
Don't click it again now.
Okay. All right. So I think that was well done for buzz pollination. There's another plant that I thought was just really fascinating called fillory. And fillory is not, the one that's most common out here is not our native. We have a regular fillory that's all around, it has these little purple pink flowers. And then we also have a red stem fillory, and both of those are non-native. I learned just a few years ago we actually have a native fillory, and we saw it out in Simi Valley. I don't think it's in Santa Clarita, and it doesn't look at all like the fillory that we have growing here. And so one time Robert was pulling out fillory, and we were kidding. He says, well, can you make any kind of food from this? Game on. So I learned, pardon? Yeah, kind of purple pinkish. It's short to the ground. It's kind of like by the parking lot area and the sidewalk and things like that. You see it a lot right now. It's in bloom.
Yeah, horses love it. We call it horse catnip.
Oh, good. Good. So like for a lot of our plants, if they're new growth, they can be edible. And so I got the newest growth of it. And I went to Trader Joe's to see what's the ingredients on this really delicious spinach dip. And I wrote that down. And instead of spinach, I used fillory and made a passable dip out of it. But it was new growth, and it is edible. You just have to clean it and blenderize it, and you don't want to have the fibers that's inside it. But, you know, while you're pulling the stuff out, I want you to know that you can eat it. What
species called here?
Fillory. This is
the one species name, and it's a family of them?
Well, I want to show you this. This might answer your question. Okay, another one. That's how they start. So it moves. It drills into the ground. Okay, so that is just showing what happens with filiary when it grows in. We don't have too many plants that drill into the ground. Yeah, isn't that is a pretty good one. Okay, so let's see what's after.
This is the stork's bill.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is cause.
Yep, that's all that.
I like the music on that hell. It's the green
Doesn't require.
Okay, I'm going to pass that. Okay, so that is the question you get from kids on hikes. You know, they have had the program indoors and you're out on a trail, and how many of us have heard this? I'm hungry. When do we eat? Right? We all will be hearing that. And so that's one of the things that we used to do a long time ago when we had all the mustard. We used to kid and say, well, not really kid, pick up some mustard flowers, you know, that's edible. Oh, no. So they didn't want that. So anyhow, I'm trying to think of what other foods that are close by that are edible that might make sense to you. We did the horehound. On the Las Pinedas Trail, we have California Bay growing. I don't think your school kids are going to go all the way up there, but you might have scout groups. This is, you can grab a leaf and crunch it up a little bit so you can see what...
Lettuce.
Pardon?
Miner's lettuce is edible.
Miner's lettuce is edible. Do we have that growing, though, close to the center?
Yeah, it's on the hillside trail. I've seen it. Ecology.
Okay, and then what you could tell them is, you know, when they go through the oak woodlands, you can tell them, we have acorns, and you can tell them the whole process and see if they're willing to do that. Of course, they might, you know, it'll take a little bit of time for them to leach out the acorns, but they can do that too. So I'm passing around California Bay, and our bay is actually superior to the ones that you get in the supermarket. It's stronger, you get little bay nuts from it. The bay nuts that come from bay can be roasted, and some people say it's almost a chocolatey taste. The bay nuts actually look like little baby avocados too. Bay is another kind of cool thing. Some people say, oh, I get a headache from it. Other people say, oh, it cured my headache. And so, you know, it's just bay. But we do have that growing inside the park. But you can tell them about the acorns. And most of our grasses, I don't think that they want to eat them, though. You know, that would be edible. Also, what we have growing here is, if you want to cook, on the botany trail, we have flowering ash. A long time ago, baking soda wasn't around. And so you know what they did? You know how it got its name, too, with the flowering ash? They would take stems and twigs from the flowering ash tree and burn it into ash. And these ashes were used instead of baking soda. So we have that ingredient, but I don't think they want to bake when they're, you know, you only have an hour's time with the kids too.
So moistening the ash and
Pardon?
So moistening the ash and heating it to a certain degree will release carbon dioxide like baking soda?
I don't know that. I only know that there's recipes on it and where you can make biscuits with it. And there was a person who's been experimenting with this to see the ratio of the ash to the flower, but that depends again on the growth of the tree, the conditions of the tree. You know, a long time ago, you had with the datura, the Jimson weed, that was a rite of passage for some kids as they were entering into adulthood. You know who made, and they used datura. It was the mothers who made the tea. And they took it in January where it was the weakest. If you knew your child was going to be taking Jimson weed, you loved your child and you wanted to make it as mild as possible. And so I know of one location in Towsley where they would do these rituals. And it was like 4 times in their life they would go through these rituals. One of them was going into adulthood, another was marriage, having your first child. You know, there was things like that. And just wanting to have guidance. But people who took this, they also get a temporary blindness, right? And I talked with a woman who had taken this. She and her friends were using the Jimson weed, and they were out in Malibu, and this was actually in the newspaper, because one of the kids died. And so I got to talk to her firsthand and asked, how long did that blindness go? And it was a couple of days, and it was scary. And she said it took, for the amount of tea that they drank, which was just a small amount, it took a while for it to start. And it was in her body, she said, for at least 5 or 6 days. And so it's not anything to be messing around with. You know, you have some people say, oh, this is a narcotic, it can do this and that. No, it was used as a ceremony, and they had people who were guiding you. And it's not anything to be messing around with. But you will inevitably get people to ask about Jimson weed. And I can tell you another thing with the Jimson weed. If you were to take the leaf of it and rub your fingers with it, and smell it, it smells like peanut butter. And so sometimes you have small children who will, you know, they're out and you're picnicking in the oak woodlands or, you know, wherever you happen to be. And, oh, we're going to make a pretend stew. And so they'll go ahead and pick different plants and things and put it in a pretend cup or whatever. And it's like, oh, look, I'm making food. And sometimes they run into Jimson weed. And it smells like peanut butter. And, oh, and we might even try it. And then hours later, when the family's home and the kid's not doing so good, they have to track down their steps. That's why we used to have Jimson weed in the beginning part of the park by the oak woodlands, and Ian got rid of it and made sure that there was nothing around this, you know, this immediate area. It's on the other side of the park. But anyhow, that's the Jimson weed. And yes?
I've noticed that all the new leaves coming out of the elderberries right now have like a similar nutty smell.
The only thing with elderberry is there's two. Elderberry is poisonous, by the way, you guys, except for 2 times. One time is when the elderberry flowers. That's where the medicine is. It's not in the berries, it's in the flowers. And so if you take the berries and put it inside a cheesecloth bag or a paper sack, and you're making sure that air circulates around, I have taken it and put it inside, you know, just a little tiny container like the size of the tea box, right? And if you think that you're coming down with a cold, 1 teaspoon of that, like a tea bag's worth with hot water poured over it, is what was the medicinal formula. When people started to take the elderberries, that's what was used to make elderberry wine. And it was also what you're seeing in Walmart and all the other stores who are selling elderberry and saying, oh, this is the hip thing to, you know, when you're sick. And if you look at the ingredients, you'll see that most of the ingredients are sugars. And if you take it just the flour, oh my gosh, if you have just a little handful of that flour, it's like a room freshener. I mean, the smell is beautiful. And you don't need a sweetener with it. All it is just 1 teaspoon. When people do the syrup and think that they're going to be healing you, the syrup is only good, the shelf life is only good for like 2 months. Unless they have it loaded with preservatives, and I don't know what you're doing other than you're just paying for the name because it's not the real deal. So that's it with elderberries, just the flowers and the berries. When they made it into a flute, I wondered about it because you're having the poison on the stem. But they wait a while before they're playing it too. So, you know, they get to season it. So I think that they may have done more, you know, more than that than just have it. And I wouldn't attempt the leaves. Have you ever gotten sick by taking something that you thought was edible? I did. Pardon? Yeah, I wanted, because I wanted to hear everybody else's story. Okay, so I'll tell you this one. There is a berry that, you know, on a very popular hiking trail we have called red berry. And there's buckthorn red berry and hollyleaf red berry. There's two different forms of this, and both of them grow in our parks, okay? And when it's ripe, the berries are red, and when they turn a deep red, you know, we used to go ahead and pick like a berry or two, and some of us liked the taste, you know, and said, oh, it kind of tastes like a sweet watermelon, and others just said, not very good. Well, I was on a kick for going to the park really early in the morning, and I wouldn't eat until I was done with my hike. And so I was going up this one hill, and I knew where the red berries were, and would, you know, try one. It's like, not ready yet. Next day, not ready yet. By the end of the week, it was like, oh, it is so good. And I was hungry, and I grabbed a handful of these berries because they tasted so good. And, oh, I'd say in 5 to 10 minutes of eating it is when I knew I should not have done that. And so can you relate to this? And so I'm going down the hill, and I had to stop like every few minutes, and people were coming up, you know, that I knew that, you know, were on the trail, and I said, I ate something I shouldn't have. It was once I got down from the park, I didn't even think I could make it home. I called up, you know, 2 different friends who are into native foods, and it was like, well, gee, now we need to document it, Helen, because, and so what we finally figured out, inside the elderberry are little tiny seeds, and it's probably the little tiny seeds that were in, not the elderberry, the red berry. And so it was probably the little teeny seeds that were inside the berry, because I just ate the whole thing, that I should have spit out. And so that could be, I mean, it's the same thing with manzanita. Manzanita, you know, we talked about that last week. Manzanita is a sugar, actually, but there's some poisonous seeds inside it. And so you have to be careful when you're tapping it out that you're not going to be including those poisonous seeds. Red berry apparently is the same thing. So anyhow, there you go with the food. I would tell them about acorns, and just to be patient, because we probably don't want to encourage kids eating food that's here. So let's see. Oh, the other thing, medicine. Something that's really worth your while to know about is willow. So we were doing this, I was doing this with a class on, not here, different park on Saturday. And this is, you know, the salicylic acid that's found inside aspirin, it's also in willow and almonds, but willow. And so this is what they did before there was, before aspirin. You would take willow that's this thickness, okay? Little twigs, probably not so much, but, you know, up to here. And we can do this after if anyone's interested. You peel this outer bark, you know, this outer layer, and that's where the salicylic acid is. And so if you take several strips of these, you know, about that long, that's your aspirin. That's your 2 doses. So it's good to know willow. Know that you want to get it when it's green. You know, you can find branches like that, that's fine. But once you cut it, some people will take the, peel the outer coating of the bark and will coil it and have these little willow coils, and, you know, we'll pin it like that because it's just easier. 2 of those coils would be the equivalent of 2 aspirin. And, you know, have you ever taken an aspirin and bit into it? Oh, it's terrible, isn't it? I mean, well, how would you describe that taste? bitter, and it's just not, pardon?
Foul.
Foul, yeah, yeah. So that's what this is going to be like as a tea. So because you probably don't want to enjoy a cup of, ew, right? I don't know how you put that into words. You can add other things to it. So if there is a favorite other type of tea that you drink that, you know, is probably not going to interact with it, go for it. You know, add your other flavor, add lemon to it. You know, add your sweetener to it, and then that's your medicine. So what other medicines have we got? Oh, the bay that we were passing around. Where did that wind up? Oh, there we go. Okay. So the bay is also considered medicinal. Some people use it for toothaches. They'll take one leaf and chew on it. Let me see anything else for.
You know what it's good for, Helen? The bay. I tried it one time, but I overdosed. I was at Theater of Pain, and they were giving a talk. And anyway, nasal congestion. If you take a little bit of the leaf, and you kind of roll it up a little bit, you can and stick it in your nose. It does like a decongestant, but you have to use a tiny, tiny bit.
Yeah.
I used too much, and it was like sticking, I don't know, a wobble of wasabi or something.
Well, I think that's key is the dosage, because, I mean, look, we are all different sizes and body types and have different medical backgrounds and all that. And so how is somebody to be so well trained that they would know how much you specifically need to take care of your problem? And so that's one of the problems with these herbs, and even more of a problem when you're looking at it from a native plant perspective, because the growing conditions change the potency too.
And I've heard it said, yeah, the danger is in the dosage. You know, it's all about how much, how little, whatever.
Right, right. Let's see.
And the effectiveness also.
That's true.
A lot of people are like, oh, this didn't work. Well, you didn't use enough.
So I told you about, you asked about the elderberry. There's also another plant called everlasting. And so that's considered to, it's kind of a maple syrup smell. We have that in the park too, don't we? Yeah, and so that one, when it flowers, that's another one that, you know, you have a handful of that you add to tea. And that's probably a little bit stronger than the elderberry, but it also is a very, very pleasant tea. So you have the medicine, you have black sage and sagebrush. Adams has talked about sagebrush as a liniment, and so that is the strongest type of pain medication, where you're taking sagebrush and alcohol, not the type that you would drink, rubbing alcohol, right, and avocado pit. I mean, he goes through the whole directions, and I could give that to you for anyone who wants that. But what's simpler, if you have pain, black sage or purple sage, you take a jar that size, right? And you have that with black sage or purple sage, the stems, leaves, all that. You put it in a jar of water. I've done this when the sun is out, and let the sun bring out, make like a sun tea of it. And then I remove the vegetation, you know, and then it has to turn a color. It has to go like a little brown. And so it generally takes a day or two, depending on how intense the sun is. I remove the plant matter in it. And it's good for about a week or two. And so what I'll do with the black sage or the purple sage is I have a little plastic shoebox that my feet can go in. And we're used to, we're in a world where we take medicine. We're always taking a pill or some kind of thing orally, but there's other ways you can get medicine into you. And that, as a pain remedy, works on the soles of your feet, the palms of your hand, or your scalp. I'm not going to be washing my head with it. So it's easier for me to have my feet inside it, because then I can play on my computer. Right? And it does seem, I think it does. And I gave you some of the sagebrush liniment. What did you think of that? Ah, okay. Okay, so I could even give that formula, and you could get that out to the class on how that's done. So that's, And then the other thing that happened with medicine is sometimes our plants were used for warfare too. And so there's some things that can kill you. Now this is not native, but we have way too much of it. This is hemlock. Okay, some of you are shaking your head, you know what that is. To me, I think it smells like cat litter. I mean, it has a very distinctive smell, and just the smell of it can make you feel not the greatest. But hemlock has hollow stems, and hemlock also has red going through it, like what I showed you with the sumac. It has, you know, little lines or little dots on it, but that is our poison hemlock. And we also have in this state water hemlock, but I don't think we have it in our area. So this is another good plant to know because it does grow out here, and just a teaspoon of it can kill you. So we do have this plant, and it's, you know, pardon?
How do you know that?
That we have it here?
That a teaspoon will kill you.
Christopher.
You just got a lot of witnesses.
Yeah. Well, he has taken it, and he says, you don't think so?
I heard that the dosage for Socrates when he died was like a half-gallon bucket of leaves.
Yeah,
He said that's what killed Cleopatra too, hemlock.
Yeah, because, okay, so they said, you know, with Socrates, when they wanted to kill Socrates, this is a description translated to English. They laid his hands on him, and after a while examined his feet and legs and pinched his foot hard and asked if he felt it. He said no. Then after that, his thighs. And passing upwards, he showed us that he was getting cold and rigid. And so they gave him hemlock to kill him because that was his method of choice. And he wanted to have it documented what happens when it kills you. And so you're saying it would take a whole lot of it?
That's what I read somewhere. I've eaten like a little tiny bit of it and I don't feel anything.
Really?
So when you say a half teaspoon, you mean dried and
Yeah.
crushed up?
Yeah.
That actually might end up being a solid leaf of it, a half teaspoon.
Well, know that it's feathery. Know that it's in the carrot family. And don't make a mistake. Yes?
Excuse me, is Fremont star lily also in that same family? Because that's also highly poisonous.
Different family. And the story that went with it where people died from that, again, was one where they hadn't eaten anything, and that was all that they were eating. And so that would go back to the same story with the Amsenkia, the fiddlehead. If the dosage, like what Ron was talking about, that's, something, okay. So the other thing is utilitarian. Where'd I put it? I don't know where I did put the clicker. Here it is. Okay, cordage. So you all have a yucca. You want to know how to make cordage from this? So I need, yeah, the lights can go on for this. I need a couple of volunteers to demonstrate this. This is the last thing we're going to do before we take a break.
Yeah, you tell them you want to take a break.
Well,
it's 10:30. I mean, that's when they usually take a break, or do you?
Okay, let's take a break, and then we'll go on to that. Take a break and try some nettle. And if you want to see, sew together to make like a little plate.
How many can write, you can add writing crop.
There you go. There's many uses. I've seen them take yucca and make them into... Be careful of her.
Cindy's okay.
So does anyone have any questions on how to make this? Are we good?
You do that, and then once you get one, then you just combine this with another one and just keep going.
Right. Well, you're going to have two. So once you get that, then you take, 2 of them, and it's folded in half, and then you just put it right in. You know, when you get to the end, but it'll go like that, and then you continue on. Right. So it's always folded in half, and then you insert it where it's running out. So if you have any other questions on that, let me know. We're going to continue on.
So you can do it with the dried leaves, but then soak them in water first or something?
Yes, well, these have been soaked in water. Sometimes people will take the yucca and pulverize it to remove all the green and just work it that way. But I think it's easier like this. I don't see any problem with having green stems. But you're right, you can do that. And with basketry, sometimes they do that too. They'll soak the fiber that they're using and pound out, the plant matter, so they just have the fiber inside.
Kill the lights, ready?
Yeah, I think we're ready. Okay. Why this is so important. You can keep on working with your yucca, but here's what they do in Peru.
Click it again.
Again? Okay.
The Quechua-Chaca Bridge in Peru is rebuilt every year using traditional Inca engineering techniques by the local communities on either side of the canyon. This bridge has been continually rebuilt in the same location since the time of the Incas. The entire bridge is built in only 3 days. To construct the bridge, grass guacoyo is harvested and then prepared to be woven into large cables, beginning with small cord, which is twisted together from the local grass. These cords are then twisted to form a larger rope, and the ropes are then braided to create the main cable. Up on the highway, the community works together to pull these ropes to stretch them out. These ropes are woven and twisted. Each rope is made from 30 of the small cords, and then 3 of these ropes are braided to form the cables that will support the bridge. After more stretching, the cables are then carried down to where the bridge will be installed. The old bridge is used to run the first cable across for what will become the new bridge. And then the old bridge is cut down and it falls into the water and is washed away by the river. All day long, the community pulls on the new cables to prepare them for the bridge. These supporting cables are anchored to the stone abutments on either side of the canyon. Victoriano Arizapana is the architect of the bridge, and he uses traditional methods which have been handed down in his family for centuries.
Trabajito que mi papá me ha puesto, he empezado desde los 12 añitos. Nisho también puente de Quechua-Chaca no pa munapone. O sea, wawa tena vestito munano.
The structure of the bridge is made with 4 cables for the floor and 2 handrails. The bridge weaving begins in the morning with Victoriano weaving from one side and another worker weaving from the other side until they meet in the center of the bridge. When the bridge is finally finished, the communities come together to celebrate. The structure is remarkably safe. It has been built for centuries in this way and can hold dozens of people at any one time.
Each year.
Every year.
Each year they do one. And you have the basics. You just learned the basics, except they had grass that's stronger. And what you have to do is one extra step of shredding the yucca. We did a contest once. There was like a camp, and people brought different cordage, and they wanted to see if they could pull a car. And so it's like what they're talking about. Once you have your cordage, then you take another one that's already done, and you put those together and so forth. I mean, that's the same thing. Principle behind rope, too. You start out small, and then you can keep on adding and adding to get it stronger. And Yucca pulled a car. So, you know, that can be done pretty, somebody made a comment. Yes?
Like something related with that we just saw, I don't know if you know, in the Lake Titicaca, that is between Peru and Bolivia, there is a whole like indigenous community that they live on the lake, and they made like these handmade islands out of like something like brass.
Whoa.
The Uros community is the name. And the whole island where they live is made out of like this floating grass. Obviously the structures are like super elaborated. And they just float there, they live there. Their boats are made out of also like things like plants, their houses, their beds, their clothes, everything. Everything is made out of it.
Amazing.
It's really amazing.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, look at what we're learning, though. You know, the world keeps getting smaller, and we're seeing what other parts do. I couldn't have shown that, 20 years ago. I didn't know that existed. So we're going to enter into biomimicry, and it's using nature as a source of inspiration to human problems. Oops, I don't want that. No. Okay. Ron, could you read that?
What?
That.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, with a loud, booming voice.
By 2028, biomimicry is expected to be a $1 trillion industry, creating 1.6 million new jobs in the U.S. and generating $35 billion in gross revenue.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
When I saw that, I think that was on U.S. News. I mean, I don't publish things unless I can support everything that was said. And it's like, that is just the craziest thing I ever saw. And so that's why what we're going through right now is really important. We used to get, 10,000 kids come through Placerita. And if you can talk about the uses of plants, not just in historical perspective, but also what it can do for the life that they're living now and future. This isn't something past that we're looking into some kind of museum. We're looking towards the future now. And so I thought that was a pretty important thing to see. Everyone know about Kevlar? Kevlar has been around since 1965. And it was invented by a woman named Stephanie Kwolek. She was interested in sewing and science. How's that for a combination? And so she was working for DuPont studying polymers, and she noticed that in the cold, they made an interesting chain. And when she was like looking at it, this is, under microscopes, and it was like, well, look at that. It's making this fuzzy thing, and it looks like it's really strong. And so quite by accident is how Kevlar was found. And so what do we use Kevlar for? For vests, I couldn't hear everybody. Yeah, bulletproof vest for search and rescue, uses that. Firefighters, people, some motorcycle clothes are on that. And so we got to love Kevlar. But then...
Fortifying electronics too, like making cases and things for computers,
yes.
Laptops and phones and things.
Yes, and in fact, we could not be seeing this PowerPoint right now if it was not for Kevlar. This all works together, but that was a big jump for 1965 to see what we're at now. And so is there anything stronger than Kevlar? Has everything been discovered already? Yes?
Spider silk.
Okay, you're jumping it. Here we go. This is from the Darwin bark spider.
Like a real-life spider woman, she sprays strands of silk in one long continuous flow. The threads fan out like a sail and drift on air currents blowing across the water. Every few seconds, she crimps the strands together to stop them spreading too widely. The breeze will do the rest, blowing the threads into a single line and a 25-meter bridge. Now she must reinforce her bridge because her web will hang from it. But there's something bouncing the line at the other end. Another Darwin spider is trying to take advantage of her hard work.
Cut the line
She's dealing with the intruder head on. The cut line is an inconvenience, but no more than that. With hooks on the tips of each leg, she gathers in the thread. It won't go to waste, as she'll eat it later. When it's all reeled in, she sprays again. Out streams another 25-meter bridging line. How a spider no bigger than a thumbnail can produce so much silk so quickly has baffled scientists. And it's no ordinary silk. It's the toughest natural fibre on the planet, tougher than steel. And it needs to be tough to span the wide river. With the bridge taut and the ground anchor in place, it's time to construct her trap. These spiders can build the world's largest orb webs, up to 2 meters wide. A few hours from the first spray of bridging line, the job is done.
Okay, so. Okay, so, and that's called dragon silk. 82 feet long, and 10 times stronger than Kevlar. And so already that's being implemented in technology. That was discovered in 2009. So what are the designs and products inspired of nature that all use these rules? Nature runs on sunlight. Nature uses only the energy it needs. Now think about that one. Like, we've had a lot of rain, and has anyone seen limbs of trees that have fallen down, but yet we have all this rain? You know why that is? Because the trees are pruning themselves. This is more than what they can handle, and nobody's coming around doing it for them, so that's why some of the limbs are dropping. There's no place more for their water to go. And so, I mean, these are the rules, and you can see nature fits form to function. When we see different animal holes, do they say, oh yeah, this is nice, but I'm really going to turn that into a mansion, and I want to have a few extra. Well, then again, maybe gophers do that, right? But generally, their holes are no bigger than what they absolutely need. They don't go, go crazy over it unless there's a reason for it. Like, squirrel. Some animals will store up food because they have to, not because it's just a cool thing and my squirrel is better than your squirrel, right? Nature recycles everything. Nature rewards cooperation, and nature banks on diversity. So who is the father of biomimicry? That would be Leonardo da Vinci, who wanted to fly, but he couldn't. And he said, no, man can't do that. And why? As we grow, we weigh more. And we need to go even faster because of that. And he said an average adult would need wings at least 22 feet to fly. Well, gee, when you see pictures of angels, right, they're supposed to be flying 22 feet wingspan. I've never seen in any kinds of art history books of angels with wingspans that long, but Da Vinci, you know, he was onto something, so that's not going to happen. And another thing that we needed was the hollow stems or the hollow bones that birds have and people don't. And so he was on to the right idea, but people after him had to continue. So we talked about the hollow stems and other things that were inspired by nature, like solar cells. That came from leaves. They came from leaf cells. And so how does a solar cell actually, I mean, what's it made out of? Does anyone know how, if you're going to make a solar cell, it's made using nanotechnology, and it uses metals and also some organics. And it's still patterned after the system of leaves. Then you have another thing called Velcro. Oh, wait, I said the wrong word, or did I not? And so here you have burdock, which is on our canyon trail. So once you are on the canyon trail and there's a little bench on the left-hand side, you have the first creek that you cross. There's some burdock growing there. So if anyone wants to know what that looks like, it's right here in our park. After a hiking trip in the Alps with his dog, George de Mestral's dog was covered with burdock burrs. And he was, got home and was taking the burrs out of his dog's fur and noticed how they just kind of cling. And so he thought, I'm going to take a look at this burdock and I'm going to look at it under a microscope. And he noticed there was a system of loops. And so we have the Velcro nowadays that makes this, very understandable sound. They wanted to market it. And they said, well, this is great. This is going to replace cordage. And so they took it to fashion to see what kind of clothes could be made from it, and they hated it. In 1955, they hated this stuff. They didn't want the zipperless zipper. They wanted the real stuff. And it was only with NASA that this started to become acceptable. So the space program in the 1960s, and Pierre Cardin, am I saying his name right? Probably not. I'm not a fashion person. They're the ones who finally got a start in this. And so because of this, we can credit children not knowing how to tie their shoes. Okay. Okay. Before I do that, I wanted to talk about firefly catching. I grew up in the Northeast. And when I was a kid, they used to give you money for if you caught fireflies. I think it was like a jar was a penny or so. It was like next to nothing. It helped encourage the chewing gum habit. But I mean, other than that, not much. But we didn't know that scientists were studying bioluminescence from the fireflies. And from that, you get your glow sticks. And so, it started out with the fireflies. And you know what's really cool about the bioluminescence things? They found out that it also works as a shark repellent. Now go figure that one. If they put one of those glow sticks in a tank with the sharks, several sharks tried to jump out and others became docile and some even died. And so it's like, so I don't have any picture with bioluminescence, but I thought that was worth talking about. Oh, here. Caltech's thing. They started to look at the chimeras. Have you seen these little seeds? You throw them up, and do you notice that when they come down, they kind of like spin around? Well, they said, well, what makes it do that? That's kind of an interesting thing. And if anyone wants any of this stuff afterwards, you're welcome to go home and play with some of this. But Caltech thought, not Caltech, MIT. MIT was the one that said, well, let's study this out. And so they collected like 100 pounds of these maple seeds and put it through wind chambers and wanted to see what they could do with it. And long story short, they said, well, what would happen, let's say, in a helicopter and an engine went out? Can it safely land by the design, simply by following that? And so that's what they were working on. And they wound up coming out with some RC, radio control helicopters, and they're still in progress. But like with a lot of these inventions, they may have the technology, they may know how to produce this, but some things get bottlenecked because of restrictions with the government, and they have to have patents, and there's a lot of paperwork that's involved. So I think that they're closer with this than what we'd like to believe. The tumbleweed. This has been an explosive year for tumbleweed. Has everyone seen how much is out there? And, well, Pico Park, I mean, it looks like the hill is going to, like there's an army of them marching down there. I talked with the ranger, and he said, well, some years it's just like that. So they liked the tumbleweed, too, NASA tumbleweed rover. And do we have? No, we don't. Okay, sorry. I was just kidding. So based on the tumbleweed, or the Russian thistle, is this design that bounces along, and they're able to keep track of the data. And so this is what's being used for NASA, and it's with a space grant. There's, pardon? So there actually is a use for that. Have you ever had your phone and you're in the light and you can't see what's going on, and you want to look something up on iNaturalist or whatever, and it's like, dang, and you have to kind of make like this shade so you can see it? Can you believe there's a moth that's going to be creating these screens that you can put on top of your phone pretty soon? And I'll show you how that worked.
Now, I found something amazing in my garden. This is an elephant hawk moth larvae. And as you can see, he's pretty cool, isn't he? He's massive. He's at least 3 inches. And I found him in my vegetation, which goes to show you've got to be really careful when you're clearing up in your garden this time of the year. It's September time, so all these little guys here are getting ready to go down and hibernate. The elephant hawk moth caterpillar, or larvae, are generally seen from July to September, with enormous black eye spots towards the head. When disturbed, they swell up to show these enormous spots, at the same time shrinking in their tiny front head. This hopefully scares off predators in the process. The tail spike is completely harmless, and there for show alone. He's going to grow up into a big hawk moth, and you'll see them. They're one of the biggest ones, the most spectacular moths in England. He's got these fabulous little eyes, if you can see there, on his back, that will scare off predators. They love to eat fuchsias, and they love broadbay willow herb, otherwise known as fireweed. And I actually have some fireweed here in my garden. So once I'm done showing him to you, I'm going to pop him back so he can have a lovely meal. Once the larvae has fed enough on plants such as willow herb, fuchsia and bedstraw, they will overwinter as chrysalids, hidden amongst low vegetation and soil, to emerge the following spring as a beautiful pink and green nectar-feeding moth with a large 6 to 7 centimetre wingspan. These moths are not considered to be endangered. However, if you do disturb one, make sure you put it back into an area to which it is accustomed to.
So the eyes don't reflect light. And so they studied why is it that the eyes don't reflect light, and that's what's probably going to become something that you can buy, once it goes through all the different government red tapes, and it's available for the public, that you can put on your phone and you can be able to see what's on your phone in the bright light. Isn't that cool? So you ever get annoyed with mosquitoes? We don't have too many of them out here, but it's still around, and we know that the female, you don't really even notice that the female is biting until it's too late. And folks actually study that. We have a thing called a painless microneedle that we have to thank mosquitoes for. And so it was like, what is it that she does? And so they saw that she actually uses 3 different needles that's injected in, and you don't, it's not felt. And so even some things that we say, well, why were mosquitoes even created? I hate them. You may be thankful for them someday, and you don't even know that if you are, having to use a microneedle. Another thing that we notice with anyone who's been involved with boats or shipping, there are mussels that collect on it, and you have to hire people, or you have to go down yourself to scrape these things off. So what kind of glue is it? It's, that's on the mussel glue. And so it's like, so we know that the mussel glue is waterproof, but did you know that they can turn it on and turn it off? So they can have the glue. I mean, when we glue things, it's like, okay, it's permanent. But this type of underwater glue that's being developed by mussels with, I want to say with the flip of the switch, I'm not sure how they do it, but they can make it so the glue doesn't work in certain situations, which helps with some of underwater projects that's going on. Let's see, can you ever reinvent the umbrella? Is it perfect? Well, apparently there's always room for improvement. And so let's see what the ladybugs do. Okay, so the ladybug wings are surprisingly large for their size. We don't generally see it because they're so fast. And they wanted to put, and they're very strong too. They can fly through strong winds and they don't break. And so they wanted to see what would happen if we replaced one of the wings, let's see, that would make it that strong. And so they wound up using clear fake fingernails on a ladybug, and the same kind of what we just saw online. And it works like, it's similar to foldable solar panels. And they said, wow, this is really good, and it's good for satellites and spaceships, but it also has the potential to change the umbrella design that we have today. Okay, so we have smart fabric that's patterned after pine cones that open and close. And then we have sunflowers with the circadian rhythm. And it's like, so what can we get from that?
No, you're not going crazy. Young sunflowers really do follow the sun from east to west and back on most days. Biologists and researchers say it has to do with a sort of internal clock.
Just like you and me, that regulates our sleep patterns, plants have a circadian clock as well.
And in the case of solar tracking, they help to have the plant follow the sun throughout the day.
The sunlight-sensitive leads, along with the internal circadian clock, help to physically tilt the sunflower.
That causes hormones to be distributed differently on the different sides of the plants, and that causes unequal growth.
You'll find that after a while, your sunflowers may just look east once they're fully grown.
But there's a benefit to them facing east when they're mature, and that's to help attract pollinators in that warm morning sun.
If you would like to learn more about the science of moving sunflowers, just head over to our website, WTHITV.com. In Terre Haute, Matt Brooks, News 10.
So the sunflowers move from east to west. Isn't that cool if you want to follow directions? Does everyone know what prickly lettuce looks like? We need to go on a hike sometime, huh? Yeah.
20 minutes.
Maybe. Okay. Well, because that also tells you direction too. That's your compass plant as well. I don't know where I'd find it here immediately, but maybe we should go out. I don't know. I just wanted to talk about another thing that is kind of, I have no more of this, so this can, I'm done. I'm done with that. Hair. There was a hairdresser in Alabama in 1989 who was, cleaning up the mess of hair, and he was looking at it, and he was thinking, well, hair is such an interesting substance. It gets oily, you need to shampoo it often enough, and then that triggered something in his head. It's like, wait a minute, hair is really good at collecting oil. I wonder what more we could do with that. So he started to collect this hair and asked for people to collect hair and fur. And they took, initially it was tubes like pantyhose, and they were stuffing the tubes with the hair, and then it was put inside like a tube on top of that. And you know what they were using that for? Oil spills. Oil spills. And so there was a major one. I wanted to get to that with BP, with British Petroleum. Do you remember that one in the Gulf of Mexico? That was in 2010. And so this one started in 1989, and they were messing around with what it can do for oil spills. But with the BP one, they actually asked them, hey, do you want this? And so this started out as a grassroots thing too, by the way. It wasn't a big university or anybody with any kind of funding. It started out with the guy in Alabama, and he made contact with a company called Matter of Trust. It's in California. So Alabama and California actually got along and still get along when it comes to this, this company. And the problem with initially with having these tubes that was to collect oil from oil spills was once it was full, and it didn't take much for it to collect the oil, it sunk. It sunk down to the bottom. It's like, oh, we can't use yours, we have to use the artificial ones. And so they fixed that though. The pool noodles? They found like the same stuff that pool noodles are made out of, they put that on the hair mats and used that. So the stuff that the Coast Guard was coming out with was pretty much staying exactly even with the top of the oil spill. But there was still some that had gone down. And the oil mats that were made out of hair, sunk down just enough to get the next level. So they're using both of them. And they didn't want to use nylon when it came to like the hose or the tubes and things like that. So they changed that into hair mats. And so they took hair and fur and they sort through it to make sure that there's no, like when they sweep up after a hair salon, that there's cigarette butts and things like that. So they have people actually that go through that and pick all that out and melt it kind of like felting. And they make these mats that resemble like doormats. And so that is what they're using now along with the pool noodles. And so they said since it's still on the grassroots level, they said anyone who has human hair or animal fur, they're still taking donations because they need that and they can't manufacture it in a company. And they said, why have, how many tons of it land in landfills? Just send it to us, and we will take it from you. I don't know if they pay for the shipping, but I thought that's kind of a cool thing to know, that we even have stuff on a grassroots level.
Next time you get a haircut, just ask your barber to sweep it into a bag.
Or ask, yes, exactly, and say that it's going to this company called Matter of Trust. So go figure. It absorbs 5/10 its weight in oil, and they have nothing man-made that can equal what's going on right now with hair and fur. So anyhow, we learned a lot from nature. It's not just about plants and bugs. It's where we find our best ideas and tricks. Nature is our ultimate inventor, and we're just the ones taking the notes. That's it.